Hello. I just wanted to share with you a little bit more about my main spirit guide, the little Chinese man that has been around me since year dot. We've spoken about it a little bit before and how he first came into my awareness at the age of 11. I've written about that. But really, I think it was later on in my life when I had left home and left that life of being in a religious cult or sect and was looking to find some direction as to where I was going, that I was led to a spiritualist church and then to a psychic development group. And I started to become more aware of this familiar presence helping me in this journey. I was still unaware, though, that of who it was. I was many times told by mediums who would come to the spiritualist church who didn't know me that there was a Native American Indian who was very tall, who stood behind me. And it turned out this gentleman was one that helped me initially in my first healings and was with me for some years, but has probably stood back a little bit at the moment while the Chinese man seemed to step forward. I think the time when you really, when I got the confirmation which I needed, I guess, and he needed to give me some evidence and confirmation as to who he was and to how he was going to work with me, was I was teaching. I was being sat, I'd sat in circle for at least 5 years, and then I moved on to running an open circle at the local spiritualist church, and there were probably about 12 people in this little group. We'd turn the lights down so it was a bit dimmer because as you become more sensitive, and then the lights can be quite difficult to deal with. And I was asking the group to look around at each other, just let their eyes go out of focus, and to tell me what they could see in each other's auras. And after a while, I noticed, a very short while, they all were gazing at me. And I asked why they were looking at me and not at each other. And out of those that were there, probably 2/3 of them said, well, actually, it doesn't look like you. It looks like your face has now become a little Chinese gentleman. Now, bear in mind, I was clean shaven then. And so I asked what they could see. And they said, well, they could see a little mustache and a little beard. And they could see eyebrows which were arched, and I had become smaller. Sometimes people would say they would see a little hat on his head, but they also spoke of a little ponytail he had as well. So it was a little bit of a shock to me to think that they could see all of this quite clearly, and they were quite shocked themselves. However, I then said, well, if this little gentleman is here, he's now wants to see if he can walk round and touch each one of you so you can feel what it feels like to connect with the presence of a guide. And I was describing what was happening, where he was going. So I said, well, now he's coming to my right as he's walking around. Just let me know when you feel it, whether you get a gentle touch on the shoulder, the top of the head, around the face. And there was one man who was about 5, 6 places away from me, and he was sort of pushing himself back in the seat. And I said, what's wrong, Dave? He said, oh, it feels like I've got all these little needles being stuck into around my nose and my sinuses, like someone's doing acupuncture on me. I thought, that's strange. I said, okay, well, just go with it if you're comfortable and let me know when it's finished. So he was having this being done to him for maybe about 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. And then he said, oh, that's good. It's kind of gone now. That was strange. And we moved on. We didn't say any more about it. He was just a bit amused by the whole experience. And so the circle and the group came to an end and we all went home. Then the next week we met, this gentleman, Dave, who'd had all these energies around his nose, said to the group, he said, I want to share something from last week. He said, for the last 15 years, I have had no sense of smell. And he said that on the way home, my wife and I stopped at a petrol station to top up with fuel. And he said, as I was topping up with fuel, to my amazement, I could smell the petrol. And since then, I've been able to smell all those lovely smells that we have around us. And that was really good evidence that what we had experienced was something quite profound. It is my Chinese man's way of being able to say, look, it's not only what other people can see, we can do something here to give you some evidence that there is a healing can take place without you even touching the person, without you being near them. Just let us do the work. So I was really grateful for that. But even then, I was still thinking, you know what? Is it really just a Chinese man, or is it just people saying that? But anyway, my thought process was, does it really matter? You know, it's not about understanding it. It's just, if someone is feeling better, if there's less pain, let's go with it. And so I was due to go to Canada to do a little tour over there. I'd been sponsored by another Spiritist church to go over there. I was staying with a couple, and the couple was a lady who had got the Spiritist movement started in Canada, and her husband was Chinese. And so I was running some workshops, and one of the workshops I was sat with a whiteboard being put behind me, and I was saying to the group, just come and have a look and see what you see. And in my mind, I was just going into a slightly altered state, asking my Chinese man to come forward, and they were all sort of seeing things and energies moving around. And then afterwards, I noticed that what happened, the little couple I'd been staying with had come at the end of the workshop and just stepped in and sat down, waiting for me to finish to give me a lift home. So out of interest, I said to Frank, the Chinese man, I said, so Frank, when you came and sat down and watching all this was going on, did you see anyone around me? And he said, well, of course I did. I saw the little Mandarin who was there with his hat and his little ponytail, and I thought it was all beginning to tie in. So interestingly, when I'd got home and been sat again in my weekly teaching group, there was a lady who, after one of the groups, came and showed me a picture she'd drawn when she'd gone home. She said, I wanted to show you a picture I've drawn of the Chinese man that was overshadowing you. Now I'm going to see if I can just put this up in a share screen, because you might see it a bit more clearly. So there we are. It's the Chinese man as she drew it, as she remembered it from seeing it in the little group. And there you could see his little ponytail, you could see his mustache, and you could see the arch eyebrows, which seem to be the most common things that people seem to see every time. And also she drew the hand, because when this Chinese guide was coming and overshadowing himself, he was stepping more and more into my energy. And because it was to do with the healing energy, people could see that the hands were becoming different. So his fingers were long and thin. It was a smaller hand than mine. So she wanted to show that on the picture. Of course, then I did manage to get another picture done much later on, which was also of the guide as well, of the Chinese man. And I'll see if I can also show you this as well, because you might find it interesting to see the different pictures. Okay, so here is the next picture I had drawn of the Chinese man, which was quite a number of years later on, and also was really useful to pull out when I was doing a demonstration of transfiguration to people who didn't know anything about what they were going to see. I would turn the lights down a bit, I would sit and ask for my spirit guide, the little Chinaman, to come close and to overshadow me. And then people would sort of say, this is what I'm seeing. I'm seeing is the eyebrows change, the faces change, you become smaller, the hands are different. And then at the end of it, I would pull out the picture and just hold it up and say, is this what you've seen? And it would be good confirmation for them. And here you are, you can see the picture and say, oh, wow, yes, that's who it was. So that was the little Chinaman. Okay, so now you're probably thinking, okay, so we've kind of, that's all very interesting. So a lot of people said, so what's his name? Well, I asked and asked and asked, and I've been told many times by my guides, because there's more than one, that names aren't important. And the reason for that is that they and our spirit guides have often had many incarnations with us. Hence, they've had different personas. Their relationships have been very different each time, but also that brings their absolute attunement, harmony, trust, and unconditional love that we feel when we connect to our spirit guide. There's a feeling that you've known them forever. The feeling is within, not just something that you think, oh, that's nice. So I was asking and asking, and eventually, because he was a Chinese man, and because I used to play table tennis when I was little, I called him Ping Pong. So he is called Ping Pong around the world now. And it probably goes with, also fits in very well with the fact that I have a good sense of humor for all of these, as well as being very serious about it. But I'm always pulling his leg, as he, I'm sure, pulls mine at times as well. But that humor and the trust is something which is just can never be broken. So I know that we've been very much connected many, many times. So how does he help me? Now, well, there's been many times when he's helped me a lot in my teaching work. So my teaching was really always about demonstrating the connection that I had with my guides. So many people would just say, I don't know my guides, I've never felt them. And I had grown up with that. So I realized how important it was and wanted and had this pull and push, can't think of the words now, but I had this drive to be able to help anyone I met to make a conscious connection to their spirit guide or guides, because I know then that wherever that person was, whatever they did, there would be someone, something that would protect them, guide them, reassure them, and allow them to have a sense of purpose and direction in life. So my teaching was to demonstrate that wonderful harmonious connection with spirit and the guides. So I would stand up in front of a group of people. I would ask for Ping Pong to come in really, really close. And I would just say to the folks watching, just tell me what you see. And they would immediately say, oh, we can see the face changing. You become a little Chinese man. I'd hold the hand up and they'd see the hands would become smaller and longer fingers. And then I would ask Ping Pong to show him doing some healing, and people would see the energies of healing coming from the hands. So as they were doing that, also a few times I got people to measure me. So I would make a mark on the wall behind me. When Ping Pong came in, he was much smaller than me, and so I would literally become smaller. And there was a funny story about that, which you might find amusing. So I'd moved with my family from Wiltshire to Devon, and as we had to register with a new medical practice, as was the thing that they did then, they had to do all the checks and to make sure they had their records up to date. And one of those checks was the nurse in the doctor's surgery was there, and she said, can you stand up and I'm going to measure you. And she had this measuring scale, so this piece of wood all marked out with a little thing that came across your head to get the top of your head. So I'm stood up there in my socks, and she said, oh, okay, yeah, I've got the measurement. You're 5'6", maybe 5'5.5". And I'm thinking, that isn't right. I've never been that small. I'm not the biggest, but I've always been 5'8", 5'8.5" on a good day, but I've never been 5'5". So I thought, yeah, I know what's happening, because this is a medical check. Ping Pong's decided to come in, and he's getting himself checked, and they're measuring him, not me. So off we went. And I was told to come back the next week because they wanted to check something. So on the way in the next week, I made it very clear. I said, now, Ping Pong, I want you to stay out of the way in the waiting room, and I want the tallest guide you can get to come in, please, and be measured, because I'm not having any of this small stuff. So anyway, when it came to seeing the nurse, I said, look, please can I ask you a favor? Could you measure me again? Because I really can't believe how small it was last week. So, she said, it'll be the same. It's 5'5", but I'll do it for you. So off she puts me onto their measuring stick. And to her surprise, she said, I can't believe this. She said, somehow you're 5'10". I said, really? And she said, I must have got it wrong last time. You're 5'10". Well, I couldn't tell her that she'd measured an old 2,000-year-old Chinese man the week before. Now she was measuring a Native American Indian probably, and because otherwise I think she would have had to go off and take her own medication. But it was really interesting to see how that impacted on my energy. So if you feel when you're working or asking for spirit to draw close, for your highest guides to draw close, if you're doing meditation, if you're doing healing, if you're working with clients, if you're doing your therapy, your readings, and you feel yourself getting taller or you're getting smaller, realize that's connected to the energy of the guide. Now what you do, if it becomes uncomfortable, you just ask them to take a step back. And of course, immediately as you step back, then you could say, look, if you want to come forward gently until there's just a really good balance. So I used to demonstrate Ping Pong coming in, and then I would say, right, I'm going to ask him to step back, and it would be almost instant. And it would be effortless. And it took a while to get to that, to slip in and slip out in that way, that energy's been really in harmony. So, but it's something that we should be able to do. So then it becomes something we love and we trust. And rather than being afraid or feeling we're going to lose control, is to enhance everything we're doing. And when you bring spirit into what you're doing, then it will make it so much better. And it becomes inspired, which means that we are in spirit. So that's me for now, with a little bit more of the story about myself and Ping Pong. And we'll speak again very soon. Thanks for listening.